Welcome to the virtual living room of Globus Books. Right now we are broadcasting from Ghent in Belgium, but Globus Books is located in San Francisco at Balboa Street. So if you're around, stop by. We are super excited today to greet Slava Tsukerman, the director of famous, infamous, and at any rate, terrific independent movie called Liquid Sky. Today we are going to have an interview, but before we do this, I'm just going to briefly introduce the film and Slava. So if you haven't watched it yet, look around. It's on Amazon Prime, it's on YouTube, and it is one of the most successful commercially and artistically independent low-budget films in the history of cinema. It broke all the existing box office and duration records in the US, Germany, in Japan, and it was shot on just $500,000, and we will talk about that. So in New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C., the film played non-stop for more than 3 years and grossed more than $1 million in each city. It was all happening in the 80s. So this film won 5 international awards, and it inspired Lady Gaga, and Electric Clash borrowed the aesthetics from the film. Some say that the film predicted the AIDS crisis. People call it postmodern film, but the term postmodern didn't exist at the time. The New York Times called it visually bright and arresting, full of eye-catching images. So let me introduce Vladislav, or Slava Tsukerman, who is a USSR-born film director. And most people watching this film never think that the crew was actually immigrants from the former, at the time, Soviet Union, former Soviet Union now. At 21, Slava Tsukerman made his first film, I Believe in Spring. It was the first independent short fiction film in Soviet history. It won first prize at the All-Union Festival of Amateur Films in Moscow and a prize at the Montreal Film Festival. In the 1970s, he immigrated to the US via Israel. While in Israel, he was already making documentary films and made a film titled Once Upon a Time There Were Russians in Jerusalem. And that film won Best Documentary and Best Director at the World Television Film Festival at Hollywood. Slava Tsukerman is best known, however, for producing, directing, and co-writing the screenplay for the 1982 Liquid Sky. The film won the special prize of the jury at 1982 Montreal Film Festival, the Audience Award at Sydney International Film Festival in 1983, a special jury prize at 1983 Cartagena Film Festival. plus some other awards. Slava also directed the 2004 documentary Stalin's Wife about Nadezhda Alliluyeva, and the 2008 film Perestroika and Poor Lisa in 2001. But today we will mostly focus on the liquid sky. Slava, welcome. It's a very special meeting because we're also joined by Bruno Toussaint from Paris. Bruno teaches film at Sorbonne. He's very prominent figure in filmmaking. I know he spoke to Bertolucci, was given some advice. Thank you for joining us, Bruno.
You're welcome.
Slava, a few years ago, Yuri Neyman, the director of photography of Liquid Sky, described Liquid Sky as a modern Cinderella story. So Cinderella arrives at the ball. She arrives all right, said Yuri, only the ball is happening in the other dimension. And so she departs. To me, the film is much more than that. Just one of the dimensions. It's a revenge story of an abused woman who is turning the tables around. And you yourself said that the song Pirate Jenny from Bertolt Brecht's The Three-Penny Opera was an inspiration for the film. And in fact, one of the secondary characters is mentioned in Three-Penny Opera during one of the most important scenes. So one can also find many and any references and layers. Say the main character's name, Margaret, is ripe with connotations. It could be Faustin Gretchen and the Lost Innocents. It could be Bulgakov's Margarita, Satan's Ball. Sometimes I had this association. And most definitely the name of the German scientist, which is Johann Hoffmann, brings both Goethe and German romanticism to the mix. So I know that summing it all up and making an elevator pitch of anything leads to simplification. And you are way past that point where you have to make any elevator pitches. But if you had to sum up the movie, how would you talk about it? What would you say is the main idea?
It's pretty difficult to sum up, not even from point of view of the plot, but even from point of view of genre. I think that then Liquid Sky was played on Berlin Film Festival. They had catalog broken by genres. And Liquid Sky, they put separately. They said this film doesn't, impossible to put to some genre. It's all the genres are there. So I did it completely consciously. First of all, I broken one of rules, which I liked very much, because all the specialists, distribution specialists said that then you mix genres, you never commercially successful. Commercial success always connected to very clear genre films. It was successful, so it's possible to make mix of genres, but I wanted mix of everything because I wanted to make film not quite about separate people and characters. Of course, characters were there, but idea was make film about civilization. So I wanted to make a film to create a plot which will include all the myths of the civilization, of this day myths, all the legends, all the myths, and build it in one plot, which looks like separate plot, but really would have all the elements and all the characters representing these myths. So that's why main character is Cinderella, because like classic Hollywood films, the most typical, what we would call most typical film. Most typical films are Cinderella stories. It's a story of a poor or just ordinary American girl who meets her Prince Charming and wins. I should say at the moment when Liquid Sky was made, there were already quite a few American films, the serious films, not parodies, not anything, the serious films, science fiction or not science fiction, which showed hopes of Americans that some solution will come from outer space. Well, Spielberg probably started these things. And great success of these films was because most of Americans had this feeling that solution should come from somewhere, from outside. They just couldn't see the solution inside of the country. So that's why I decided that it would be American girl who really wants to find her Prince Charming and cannot find on Earth. So finally, which is the irony of it, she found her Prince Charming in the form of, I would say, formless, shapeless alien from out of space who lives in a small flying saucer. And I mean, really, really impossible to understand what's really happening. Does she find her happiness with this prince or not? But that's really story of Cinderella and all the other possible stories included in that. And like you asking that many with German, obviously a subject of aliens, I mean, in political sense, in social sense, aliens from other countries were played together with subject of aliens from outer space. All associations were there. So as much association as I could, I included in the film. I have my own theory that I like films which have many meanings, not one meaning. I think if film director, probably the same with literature, I don't know, but with films, I believe it. If directors put at least 3 different meanings in what he did, the other meanings come by itself. And so people called me and tell me they were finding something in Liquid Sky which I would never think about. Like one girl was explaining me in small details that it's really a story of woman making her career in the United States. And I agree that she's right. It's not that I thought about that. I didn't think about that. But it's there. It's there because the entire construction, the entire structure of the film was made such way that everyone can find, if it really exists in the walls, can find it there, can find this meaning. So that Yuri speaking about third dimension, it's something new to me. Maybe we were spoken with him about that. I don't remember. It's 40 years. It was 40 years ago. We could speak about everything because everything is involved, really.
It's very interesting because I thought about another angle when I saw your film. In fact, I saw it recently, and I thought about H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, and I thought also of Dracula, you know, the way they feed themselves through the pleasure, through the life of other people, and this alien kind of take the life of people by feeding themselves. So I felt it was very strong also, and so here's another meaning that I saw in your film.
Yeah, I mean, you totally see that when and I watched the movie maybe 100 times, and you see the new layers every time you watch. And we'll get back to the point of view of the alien and the outsider, because it's a repetitive theme there. But before we do that, my other question to you is the title of the film, because at the time there was the slang name for heroin in New York. But are there other connotations, or am I wrong?
Never existed. That's one of critics of somebody created this idea that there was a slang for heroin in 70s and 80s. It's never existed. This term was completely came to people from our film. It's not. Actually, it's documented inside of the film because I was studying a lot, trying to find chemical connection, all that, you know, which would put into the plot, between something happening in the brain. So I read a lot of books trying to find something about that. Actually, this connection was discovered later after Liquid Sky, but not back then. But I read book about euphoria, about drugs, and one of his historical books had this list of terms used by people in centuries for describing euphoria. And actually this hero who shoots hero in the pole in the film, he says it's exactly, he pronounced the line from this book. He says, I have it here, liquid sky, the key to heaven, milk of paradise. That's what they used to call it. It's exactly a line from this book. No one called here, and you know, I'm not proud of it, but I really met enough of junkies in the spirit making this film. This term never been used. They didn't know what, junkies didn't know what liquid sky is. They learned it from the film.
Wow, that's incredible.
Good things about liquid sky, so I feel like not very good praising myself, but after I read your question, that you know the interest in this, I decided to check.
One of the many reasons why I was so much into the movies, I was a heroin addict myself in my youth, and Liquid Sky became, you know, a part of our vocabulary at the time too, because it is one of the best descriptions. And if anybody who's listening ever took heroin, I hope not, but if you did, don't do it again. It's the closest way you can describe it. It's one of the most difficult things to describe, but you really nailed it on the head without obviously trying it. And yeah, and now if you Google it up, there will be no mention of the film. It says that it's a slang of the New York junkies at the time. Remarkable.
Google Liquid Sky exactly to check it, and I didn't find it. Exists somewhere. For some reason, I didn't find. What I found that people, you know, were speaking about the amount of entrances in Google, which really over impressive. It's 117 million today. 117 million mentioning of liquid sky in Google. Obviously, it's not only about film, but what has shocked me today that I try to mostly, like absolute majority is about the film. Second, what's not about the film, it's about the things which were called liquid sky after film was made. So, I mean, there are a couple of shops called Liquid Sky. I know the owners. There is a group, there is a rock and roll group in England called Liquid Sky. They created much later than film. There is a lighting equipment for clubs called Liquid Sky. So today I found the wine in California.
Oh, wow. That really it became a part of the whole world narrative. And this is remarkable. Speaking of film aesthetics and the scene, they were formed by the budget, and it was notoriously low budget, right? And you, Slava, knew how to make a very low budget film because you did that in the USSR and in Israel. And you once said that you actually came from USSR and then Israel to New York and not to Hollywood, because it was possible to do a low budget film in New York.
Higher education as a construction engineer and film director. So I'm kind of learn to learn. I think you always can learn what's really going on. And that I didn't need to live in the United States and to understand, to know that practically nobody comes from outside without successful American film and makes film in Hollywood. It's never happened. It's happened. Sometimes it happens with English directors and Australian directors who made in their country's career. With others, it's never happens. Even then, they have money and have producers. And they made several American films, never successful. I mean, and Hollywood works this way. Hollywood needs you to have successful film in American distribution. Even with that, it's difficult for somebody who came from not English-speaking world. So I consciously knew that it's useless to go to Hollywood. I need to go to New York. And it just happened. My life happened like that. I made my first film, as you already told. My first film I made before I could go to film school. Then I got to film school. Film school just built new studio with a lot of equipment and all that. And obviously, directors make theirs. When they learn film, they make their films. But there was a directors of photography faculty was designers, designers, and so on and so on. I mean, everybody was making their work, and they needed directors. They couldn't do their work without directors. So if director volunteered to work with one of other students, everybody was happy. Even more, there was a rule: the only reason you could miss the lecture if you showed that you were in serious shooting that moment. So I was shooting all the time. I just was never leaving the studio. And the director of the studio knew that if somebody cannot finish film, they had more money, and there is no end. Then they invited Slava Tsukerman as a producer and told Slava, look what's going on there and tell me what should we do. I looked what they're doing and saying, okay, 2 days more, we'll finish it. He never discussed with me. If I said 2 days, he knew it will be finished in 2 days. So unexpectedly, I probably even didn't know what producer, because there were no producers back then in Russia. I mean, producer was one state. And I learned producing without money. I've spent 4 years in film school studying how to produce films without money. So then I was sent to work for studio of science and educational films. And in this studio, I managed to make films with big actors, including the biggest star in Russia. But the budgets they had were budgets for documentaries, and that nobody could change. They could permit me to use actors, because why not? If I'm making film about science and I use actor, okay. But I cannot have budget bigger than standard budget for documentary. So I learned how to do it second time. So I thought that that's my unique experience would help me to make a low budget film. And it's true, it did help me a lot, actually. But I think now, I never thought about that before, but now I think, well, probably my producer experience was one of the main things why this film was made. I mean, though I never thought about that. I mean, who cares about that? I just cared to make the best film and did what I should do in order to make a good film.
It's funny, Slava, because you see, at the Sorbonne, that's what I'm saying all the time to the students, I'm telling them, low budget, at the contrary of what the market and all the product they sells you and the cameras and all that. And I tell them low budget allow you to have more staging, more mise en scène, and to go through your own imagination and to be much more personal and to have ideas that are going to be much, much more personal. And I agree entirely with you. And this limitation, in fact, as paradoxal as it can be nowadays, because people constantly say, I need so much, so much, so much. I'm raising money also for film, and constantly it's like, we don't have enough. We just have $1 million, we can't do anything, we can't, where in fact, it's exactly the reverse. The more the budget is limited, the more creative most of the time it is.
Thank you so much for input, Bruno. I feel like this talk would be fantastic for film students and for film enthusiasts, and for people who want to learn how to make films. You spoke about your experiences of studying and then making films in the USSR, Slava. And I know, and this time preparing for this interview, I found out that remarkably, you actually studied with Lev Kuleshov, who is the father of Montage and the teacher of Eisenstein and Pudovkin. And this is just mind-blowing. And of course, we all want to hear about it. And the reason it came up is because I was thinking about the style of the Liquid Sky, the general visual style. It's cut in this abrupt manner, which Yuri Neyman explained to me is a typical classic Soviet montage. So one thing led to another, and it led to Lev Kuleshov, and then Eisenstein and Pudovkin. Can you please share with us, how was that experience? How much did Kuleshov influence you? What are the main lessons? And I'm sure that Bruno, who also teaches Kuleshov and also Eisenstein and Pudovkin to his students in Sorbonne, would be asking you some good questions. I know a lot of people would love to hear about this experience.
It's happened. I mean, how things happening, I don't know. I think first in the world, certainly first in Russia, but I think first in the world, wrote a director's textbook, how to be a film director, somewhere in the 30s. And it was published in Russia. It was only one existing book, how to make films. And I found this book. I cannot remember now how I found it, but I was 14 or 15, I don't know, maybe even 13, I don't know. In very young years, because I always wanted to be a film director. I found the book, and I knew this book almost by heart. So I used all this knowledge, and I made my first film before Dick as well. Kuleshov, as a teacher of straight filmmaking, really couldn't tell me anything new. Every word he was telling us new. But on the other hand, I seriously believe that the same like writer cannot learn writing novels, the same film director cannot learn making films. It's Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and Chekhov didn't learn making films from anyone. And of course, they read books of other. And then very difficult. And when I ask question, who influenced me, whom I loved, yes, I can answer which films really were loved by me, which films brought high, more influenced me emotionally. But to say that some director influenced me as a director, it sounds strange to me, because probably if to start finding something in any film, let's say Liquid Sky, some finding something which was in other films before, one can find it. I mean, it's not so big deal, because everybody uses everybody. By the way, Kuleshov, he was saying, it was one of his favorite proverbs. I don't know if it's understandable in translation from Russian. He was saying, monkey catches flies from the air. I mean, it's exactly the first year when I was his student, he and his wife, Khakhlova, they went to Paris. I don't know if Bruno, you know, but it went somewhere in the 60s. He came to Paris, made a lot of meetings there, and everybody was asking Kuleshov, who's really created film language? Who was he the person who created it? Or was it, in Hollywood, made in Hollywood, or whatever? I mean, there are pretty many fathers on film. So he always answered to that, the monkey catches flies from the air. So the idea was that everything was in the air, and it just happened that he needed it, so he took it from the air. And all the other directors do the same thing. I mean, director is a very strange profession, because it's not describes something clear. I mean, there are different directors. There are directors that what we're speaking now, it's directors who really create film, who have in mind how it looks, how it sounds, and what the ideas they want to put in there. There are not many directors like that. It's very, very small amount. There are directors who make fantastic films, absolutely incapable of creating these things, but they know very well how to organize things, how to choose the right people, and how to take right ideas from every person they use. And they're very good directors. And sometimes it's really difficult to tell, watching the film, what kind of director was behind it. So I don't know, but when we're speaking about directing as an art, and again, it's connected to producing as well. I mean, because if film would be just an art, and directors had unlimited budgets and unlimited ability to choose with whom to work, cast they want, crew they want, everything they want. And maybe, I don't know, maybe the films would be completely different. Certainly would be much more very good films. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. You depend on everything. There are happy directors. There was in Russia a woman, Kira Muratova. I don't know if you know it. It's one of the best directors in the world. Some people maybe would say that she was the best director in the world, but she is not known much outside of Russia. And her first films were completely forbidden. Then the situation in Russia changed, and she actually didn't live in Russia. She lived after fall of communism. She lived in Odessa, which became Ukraine, and she made all her films in Odessa, Syria. But it's not the thing. She seemed to have very hard life. And then I met her in New York. She came to New York and was a party, and I met her, and I started to speak with her about what filmmaker profession, about director's profession. I said, even it's very difficult, difficult profession. And I didn't speak about politics. I said, even Francis Coppola, who's famous for very high budgets and for spending money unlimited, even he said that he never shoot a film without compromise because he never has enough money, enough. The compromises, you cannot make film without compromise. And she looked at me like I'm crazy. She said, I never made one compromise in my life. What are you speaking about? So her films, I guess, what has helped her a lot, her films are really, really low budget.
Can I ask a question about the editing and the collage of effects? Slava, there is a scene that really struck me, and I would call it a parallel editing. It's a time, it's at the beginning of a film, and the girl is being assaulted by this guy who said, yes, I've got drugs and I'm going to give you drugs. And we have and eventually she gets raped in the stairs. And we have a parallel editing, which I thought was very much in a collage of effects type, in the sense where there is a 747 plane which is landing, and it cuts back and forth from the 747 plane landing to then the German guy arriving, and to the story. Do you, if you recall, I suppose, do you want maybe to elaborate a little bit on what made you do this parallel editing? What was the meaning? I was kind of struck by this two scene intercut like that.
Well, speaking about Kuleshov effect, of course, I read his book. As I said, I already said, I read his book being a teenager, and I read everything which I could read by Eisenstein. So idea of two shots put together, giving new idea, always been from very young years in my head. For me, it's something like 2 and 2 is 4. I can use it all the time, but I would never think that I use something which brought by Kuleshov. It's just the basis of film language, and certainly Kuleshov teach a lot, but it's more like philosophical, more of understanding of the world, and still now I'm opening, I keep learning and find more and more how interesting was to be with this person and this person. So really they, even understanding about their time, because sometimes for an American, it's very difficult to understand what's really happened in Stalin's time in Russia. Because there is this tendency trying always to find good to separate good guys and bad guys, and who's bad guys, they were very bad, and who's were very good. I mean, like idea in history of music that Shostakovich was a victim, Khrenikov was a bad guy who was punishing him. And what Kuleshov was saying, not about music, about VDIK, about Film Institute, that every year he and Eisenstein replaced each other as artistic director of school. So then Eisenstein was artistic director of the school. Kuleshov was making this big criticizing of his politics, saying that he's a formalist and he's, you know, he was one who's criticizing. Then they you know, changed the places, and another one was criticizing another. And I think for them it was humor. They enjoyed this thing. So someone who would read Kuleshov criticizing Eisenstein today would say that Kuleshov was a bad person, Eisenstein was a good person. It didn't work this way. The world was completely different. So learning that, understanding that Kuleshov first film was "По закону," and then he made another film about Henry. He was always interested in America. America always was at the center of his film, especially "По закону." That's the film really which introduces Kuleshov effect and all these things. That's adaptation of the Jack London story about a group of, it's the Golden Rush, and group of English, not very educated people in Canada found gold. And one of them tried to kill them and steal gold. So what they do, and it's happening when winter starts. It's terribly cold. They cannot move, they cannot go. They need to spend time in a, I don't know, it's like a small cabin in entire winter. They need to spend time, 3 or 4, I don't remember, victims, and one who tried to kill them, whom they keep as a prisoner till the time then spring will come. They will come to big cities and will be able to give him to real justice, because they don't understand how they can make things not by law. This ordinary Englishman, they cannot think different way. So it was so shocking for Kuleshov, who was most American probably in Russia at this moment. He was driving cars, flying planes. He was completely, you know, example of everybody was considered him an American, I think, in Moscow in 20s. So you know, okay, I understand this film much later, living in the United States. Though it's a long story how I, you know, was thinking about Englishmen, how I understand it, different civilizations in different countries, how I came to anything. But you see here, Marina and Yuri. After we finished Liquid Sky, we went with film to Montreal for film festival. We were really late. It was the last day we need to bring film to the festival. We were in the car, Yuri, Marina, me, my wife Nina, who was a producer and writer, and Anne Carlyle, the star of the film. Anne Carlyle looked like a completely asocial person. Half of her hair were blue and half red. Right? She was a punk. Right? We were close to, I think Yuri was driving the car, right? But all of us Russians at one end, American, all of us Russians understood that the moment we'll come to the border, officially we need to take film out and to register in custom office. But we all understood that Anne will not permit us to do it. So Yuri was driving faster. We were thinking how we'll cross this border. And really, when we reached the border, Anne got really this asocial person, we were very social immigrants. She got completely mad. She cried, "We cannot cross the border." We said, "But we're not making any crime. We'll register film first in the festival because it's already late. We have several hours to register it. And after that, we register. What's the difference? No, it's the law. We should stop." So Anne is from really the old English ground, from Mayflower stock. So the things really exist. They're not created by Kuleshov, but I learned it from Kuleshov, that understanding of different countries, different cultures. And actually, that's another thing in Liquid Sky. We should try to put all the styles together and to play them together. That was a part of it. But you know, too many questions together again. But when I started speaking about waiting for Yuri to speak about producers part of these things, and you see, of course, if I would be American boy, I could make film like that because I wouldn't have possibility to get really top professionals to work for my $500,000 film. But Yuri, I don't remember name. I had a friend, I think Valery Bazylev, right?
No? Yes.
Yes, it's a Valery. Yes.
We were this beginning of the story that I made was film. We were all amateur filmmakers, and Valery Bazylev became a student of the photography deputy in Liquid Sky. He was studying to be a director of photography, but he still was head of some amateur studio for two boys. And one day, Valery came to me and said, "Listen, I want to invite you for screening in my school because I have a 15-year-old genius. You need to see his work." It was Yuri. I said Yuri's first work when he was 15 years old, and he was introduced to me as a genius. So that's how our relationship started. Then immigration started. I wanted to immigrate. I tried to get Yuri with me. He said, no, he needs first to make a career in Russia. And he did it. He made a career in Russia, and he married Marina. You see here, so it was two wise things to do. And after that, they came to New York. And at that moment, I already started to do my first production. So our journey was absolutely natural thing, pre-planned. But I knew that because I have Yuri, I can have something which, first of all, I can have great image. Actually, everybody believed at that moment that low-budget film can be fantastic, but it should look like shit. I mean, nobody believed that low-budget film can look good. I couldn't understand why. Well, I should understand why. It's because even talent, first of all, talent is not all. Yuri spent 5 years in film school. After that, he made several films, bigger. One of them was, I think, one of the highest budgets in Russia. So he really had possibility to learn all the technical things. And second, no genius can make any genius thing if there are no right conditions. So I knew that I have Yuri. And another thing, I love special effects, actually. Almost in all my films, I made special effects myself. Well, in case of Liquid Sky, I had Yuri, who made special effects all his life as well, and did it from very top professional technical level. So I knew that we can make it. Really, it was estimated so well in the script. All the effects in the script were something which we knew how it's going to be made. And it was planned so well that effects were shooting in the same time with editing of the film. And the last effect arrived to editing room the last day of editing. Made it exactly on time schedule. So other thing which I said that now preparing to this meeting today, I thought that probably my producer's experience was much more important than our artistic quality. That's what everybody knew, that low budget films are cheap for many ways, but the main thing was days of shooting. It's never been more than 25 days, and really you cannot shoot so beautiful as 20. I managed to cut our crew so much. I don't know who else was shooting with so small crew, but we were shooting 50 days. I don't think that there was one more low budget film which was shot 50 days. Unfortunately, I'll explain now why it was 50 days. Because it's not was because we were shooting slow. We were just shooting not the way films usually shot. We were shooting in order to get the best possible image, not in order to shoot as fast as possible. For example, so everybody knows that so-called magic hour, or like French call it American night, and shooting last moments when sun is disappearing, is the most beautiful, give most beautiful image. And I decided right away that all the night scenes of Liquid Sky will be shot in magic hour. Physically impossible, because you need to move to this location. And there are about, I don't know, 40 or somebody shots, night shots in Liquid Sky. It would mean that we will shoot nothing, but if we will shoot 25 days, we will shoot nothing but this shot. What we were doing the first half of the day, we were shooting normal location. And when it was close to the evening, we were moving completely with the entire crew, moving to the place where we need to shoot magic hour. Completely crazy schedule. And the same thing was with split screen shots. So technical things, it's very good if you know what camera to use, but certainly, if Yuri will say that I'm wrong, he has a chance to say I'm wrong. But I think the old camera was chosen to shoot it not because it had some stylistic, only because in new cameras you couldn't put film back, take it out and put it back and shoot second time to the same film. You can do it only with an old camera. It wasn't artistic, it was very difficult technical choice, which really meant shooting one shot with half of the day.
That brings us to our question, and I would like to, I know that there is so much to Liquid Sky and to the history of production, but the way I planned the interview is to cover some aspects that perhaps were not yet covered in other interviews. So here comes the question to Yuri, which connects to this mention of the camera that Slava just did, because I know, Yuri, that you used 90-25 camera Debris Parvo L, and correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but that also brings us to the heavy influence of the 1920s constructivist art. Earlier, Slava mentioned Eisenstein, and in some other interviews, Ivan the Terrible being a great influence. But there are other movies that stand out in this decade, such as Metropolis, like German movies, or The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. There's also the Soviet sci-fi film, Aelita. So I start with Yuri. How did the 20s, 30s cinematography inform your vision as a director of photography in this film?
Well, first of all, about camera. Camera was selected for simple technical reasons, without any aesthetical connections, because for special effects, we need to have sometimes 5, 6, even 10 exposures. And this camera has designed as a French camera, Debris Parvo L, This camera has a stability of the frames, which is not surpassed. Number one. First of all, any modern camera, which could meet our requirements, probably exist, I'm sure. But we have no money to use this camera, we rented. So I find out that a camera, the Parvael, which used to belong to legendary director Maya Deren. By the way, she is from Kiev, and who did great film in the 30s, Afternoon Meshes. And it still was in possession of her husband, cinematographer Sasha Hamid. I spoke with him and I explained what we're doing, and he said, this is a camera, use it. And I told him I have to cannibalize your camera because optics of this camera are not up to today standard. And please do whatever you want. And we basically strip front of the camera in order to beat modern lenses. Okay, but it was very interesting feeling to use camera which has been used by Deren in 1930s. Okay, it was a technical, first of all, approach to this camera because, as I said, for special effects, we have to build by me optical bench, but we need to have up to 10 exposures. And this would be impossible in any modern camera in our range. Okay, so as you're mentioning German film, well, it is basically all of them was expressionist film when imagery playing distinctive role in storytelling. And I always been believer in this school of filmmaking based on visuals. So in some, it was not, maybe it was influenced me, but not directly.
Thank you. And since we have this lucky chance to interview the crew, you know, part of the crew, and Marina is here as well, maybe I'll ask the same question to Marina now. So, and Marina Levikova, as I said before, is the director, the costume and production designer and arts director of the film. And that's one of the outstanding part of the film. If you watched it, and you should watch it, you will never forget the colors and the color scheme.
This fucking city is really something.
And when I was lucky enough to interview Marina a few years ago, I recognized that color scheme, and like step by step, we took it all the way back to her childhood, where she learned with a teacher at a Gulag camp who once worked for Ballet Russe and had a connection with Leon Bakst. And it's a very recognizable purple, orange, green, blue scheme that once you've seen it, you know it right away. So this is also 1910, 1920. So Marina, can you talk a little bit about your part in the movie and maybe your connection to this decade, or maybe some other era that is important to you?
Well, you're absolutely right. My teacher, my first art teacher, when I was little girl, and when I became teenager, I kept in touch with him until his end, was art director of Diaghilev's ballet in Paris. And he was one of the art directors, and during the war, he got on the Russian territory, and he was sent to camp and spent many years in in Gulag. And my father was exiled when I was 3 years old. So I was, believe it or not, I'm saying it's without being even trying to make a joke. I met absolutely extraordinary people I probably would be not able to meet in Moscow if I would live in Moscow. I met them in Gulag. I spent 13 years in Gulag. And colors, definitely he taught me about, I knew about ballet russe when nobody in Russia practically knew about it. And because he kept, my teacher, he kept connection with his friends in Paris. They, when Stalin finally died, and it was some kind of connection established, they start sending him books. And I was able to see books of all the people who was involved in Ballet Russe, who was involved in Diaghilev's enterprise. So definitely it's influenced me when we start working on A Liquid Sky, because it was one of the most interesting and one of the most favorite of mine time in the art history. So.
Yeah, the same here, and I'm so fascinated. I recognized it first time when I watched it, still high on heroin, and then step by step it led me to you guys, and I'm so grateful to life, to this odd serendipity that brings us this richness of our culture and connects everything, German expressionism and constructivism and ballet russe, and back to Liquid Sky and the 80s in New York. And now here we have Bruno joining us from Paris, and I know a lot of people are watching us and will be watching us in the future, and who knows what connections they will bring and find, because there's this what in literary studies we call intertextuality. I don't know what term you usually use in film, but I would stick to this term that I know. So with all the layers of meanings intersecting, as we have mentioned before, there's one particular film that I want to ask you about, and then we'll probably go from visuals to the sounds, to the music. But I was curious about Aelita, this other cult 20s film. Was it somewhere on somebody's mind as you were making Liquid Sky, or is it just my imagination? Maybe Slava?
Well, as I told you, everything is interconnected and everything can get in anything. Speaking particularly about Aelita, of course, Protazanov was a unique film director who was the best Russian film director of the silent era before the revolution. Then he came back from immigration and managed to become again the most, successful director of his time. He was obviously much older than the young generation which came with the revolution. And he made very different films. He made very many films, absolutely realistic equalization of old plays and all that. But he made 3 silent movies, 2 of which, actually 4, speaking about Aelita. Aelita never been among my favorite films. I never could, first of all, I couldn't see it before film school because it wasn't it was silent. But 2 of his silent movies, Protozanov's, which has a lot of avant-garde elements as well, were hits in my time already. After the war, the silence movie which you played together with in the time of the talkies, and still audience loved them. It was 2 comedies with Elinsky playing leading role, and they were very. But there was a 4th film, Marionettes, which almost unknown to anybody, but that was a real avant-garde film. It was very closest when the film got to Meyerhold Theater. But speaking about avant-garde art, which are decorations in Aelita, I had a lot of those avant-garde art around me. I can tell a lot of stories of my involvement with avant-garde art. I think it's not. It doesn't seem to be realistic to use these decorations to showing Mars and all that. But besides that, we knew the book. It was based on Alexei Tolstoy book, which we knew in my young years, in my teenage years, knew almost by heart. So it's completely different attitude to this film. The film scene already being a grown-up director. So there were other films which could influence me much, much more, even if they're not avant-garde. That's what Marina said. Of course, she knew from, she was lucky to be in Gulag, to learn art in Gulag. But then you find, even in avant-garde episode of the film, in any episode of the film, your association, any artist association, believe me, I don't know, I don't think I'm exception, I think like that. I think all artists think like that. You can unexpectedly to get your colors from Giotto or from, it doesn't matter. The period doesn't matter.
I agree, and that's what you mentioned, what Kuleshov was saying, that the monkeys catching flies from the air. That's the artist catching the ideas that are in the air, and that's what I feel like with Sky is like, very much the reflection of so many things that came through.
There are some directors who are very successful because they catch some style of the moment and succeed in this style, but they completely incapable to get further, to get outside. They usually as fast forgotten as successful. So I think that art, you should find this vision, and actually it's very difficult to explain. But I don't think that, I don't remember the moment then some Yuri, Marina, and I were sitting and speaking about color scheme or things like that. I mean, that's not what discussed. I mean, we should find some basic thing for style, and an artist would find, I mean, you should speak about some more ideological things in order to every artist and a crew could bring maximum. I mean, we spoke with Yuri on the set usually in Russian because we had very difficult. I mean, making low budget film is not easy thing. It's like one or more things about lighting. You see the very beautiful interior, it changes colors all the time. But in order to change colors every time, you should need to change lighting all the time. And crew doesn't like it. Crew in low budget films never does these things. We had real light going through the windows, right? So in order to change colors from episode to episode, the crew should change these filters, color filters on the windows. It's a big work. I mean, we shoot an episode and say, okay, change the color, change the gels. They're getting mad. They don't understand. They use in low budget film, they used to put light to the location and shoot it, the entire location from beginning with more than half of our film happened in one location. If we would change, you will never see these colors there. So one thing to have talent to make his colors, another thing to make power. I mean, look, Yuri, he is not very talented and knowledgeable DP. He has how he speaks. He has a communication talent. He got two cameras from two top directors of photography of the past. I mean, why? Who in which normal person would even try to get this old camera from a person? Yuri could do it, but Yuri made a revolution in the biggest laboratory in New York, because they didn't used to work with cameramen. They just developed material, right? And Yuri asked them to give all the characteristics, figures of all the, all the chemical process in order to give them instruction how to develop it. They were absolutely pissed off. They didn't want to do it. I don't know how he convinced them to do it. So beauty in film, well, I mean, of course, we influence everybody around, but mostly it comes not from artistic influences.
That's the whole new layer to think about after the show. But I know that, Yuri, I believe in the interview you told me that Stanley Kubrick actually contacted you, or his crew contacted you with a question, with a technical question. Is that right?
So I was very pleased. Even the first time I didn't believe that Kubrick is calling, because it's Kubrick. I said, well, I might expect somebody else calling me, like Orson Welles will call me. He said, I appreciate, but it's really Kubrick. And by question he asked, I realized this is real Kubrick. Kubrick asked absolutely right question, because a lot of things he did in the Space Odyssey, but somehow he could not figure out one element for which I use this old French camera with 12 exposure. And I was very glad that he was asked, if I may say, right question, because he knew he did it. But this question, when we use laser, 12 exposure, and a lot of prism, this could be done only with 12 exposure and very special approach to the camera and lenses.
Not long ago, I was in Moscow, and Gil approached me. Gil said, I am the best computer animator in Russia. And all the computer animators in Russia are very close to each other. And we have a lot of discussions how this effect is made. Can you explain us how it was made? I said, listen, don't try, because it's not animation. I mean, you cannot make animation like that, because that's not an animation. How it's made, it was made with different optical elements, pretty complicated process, which we are not sharing with everybody.
About visuals. While we've been very much aware about visual culture, and not only visual culture, when we're doing film from Brecht to Lisinski, but when we're doing this film, we'd like to create very special space, a liquid sky space. And this was inspired us to do everything what I did cinematographically, and Marina did with design, and we use costume and colors, that to create for this very special script, and we knew it's special script, and special approach to script, Bruno Toussaint, we knew it deserved to have very special liquid sky space, I would say. And this was our guiding force. It was our main drive.
Special place we try to create. It's we had discussed with Slava and Yuri how we can make this space interesting, because everything is happening in the same room basically. So we created 3 different color schemes for the same room. It was yellow and orange for day, and it was purple for evening, and kind of turquoise, dark turquoise, and blue for night. And all elements, practically all elements, which was in the interior of this room, was done in 3 different colors. So when we were shooting days,
plus to that changed the lighting.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I said. My crew was very unhappy changing lighting. But we spent with Yuri, I don't remember how much. We went to some hotel, actually, and working day and night. Nobody would interrupt us. We thought we would really make storyboard, but we had not enough time to really make storyboard for every shot. We just made numbers of light. I mean, we broken script by numbers of light. It was just light number 1, light number 2, light number 5. And then we were doing these numbers. We discussed what mood should be, and Yuri decided how he will make it. I have no idea what he had in his mind. So then we started shooting, And it was like that. Sometimes these numbers, that was the only language we spoke with each other. It's like there is a most difficult editing episodes than Anne plays two roles and has sex with these two people, have sex to each other. Right? So it's all the scene before sex and after, it's a long conversation. And it's like, you know, two people and crowd around them speaking, nothing else happening. They're speaking and camera is moving around, and it's first before sex, after sex. So after 15 minutes of work on this episode, our script girls started crying. We couldn't understand what's going on, and I said, I'm saying that's slide number 2. And she said, how can it be like number 2? We already moved to that. It was a completely different thing. And Yuri was said, yes, 2 is very strange. Let's make a different light. And I was just repeating. That's, you know, I cannot explain it to you right now. There is no way. Just do what I say, light number 2. So then we came to editing. I really was afraid very much that I made some mistake and they will put it together, it will not be editable. But it was absolutely perfect. Everybody thinks that it's really not two actors, one actress playing two people. It's like a lot of activity happening there. Mostly because of this changing lights. Nobody thinks about that.
Wow, I hope a lot of film students are watching us and will watch that in the future. So, you know, to get to learn and then watch the movie again. You know, we have so many questions, and of course, you know, I've been interviewing all 3 of you for quite a while now, and I still have tons of questions. But tonight we also have our participants and our viewers on YouTube, and we have a very special guest, Bruno Toussaint. Bruno, maybe you can share with us some observations, which you already did, which was very interesting on the film, on the technique, or maybe you have some questions to Slava, Marina, and Yuri.
Yes, thank you. One of my specialty, I'm teaching mise en scène, but one of my specialty is sound and sound design and sound mise en scène. And it's at the same time some comments, remarks, and of course, I'd love you to elaborate on that. But one of the main, I was very much struck by the way you treated the dialogues, and especially most of the film. And my remark is that I thought that you were working very much with the actor and actresses, like Bresson was working with his models, as he mentioned in many of his films, like Pickpocket and the only difference is that Bresson was making a lot of takes in order for the dialogue to become completely neutral. And he wanted to empty out all the dialogue from their too dramaturgical, theatrical kind of drama. And it looked like your dialogue, instead of being emptied out of a drama, are filled with mannerism.
I'd like to ask you a few questions about your childhood. Come here, Lex. Can't you see she's busy? I'll tell you about her childhood.
But the way you treat the mannerism is very much in a linear way. It means they have a very, very special way of speaking. And maybe you could elaborate on that, the way you directed the actress and the actor. It sounds sometimes like music, like Sprechgesang, you know, they have a way, you know, it's not like a regular acting. Can you elaborate or comment?
Yes, with great pleasure. Good question. So that's what I started saying, that it's stylistically, it's not only plot made with references to a lot of different plots and put together. Same thing with styles. I do want it, first of all, again, for reason of budget and all that, I really learned hard way that it's very difficult if you write a good script, but you have roles like 40 years old scientist who's getting 80 by the end of the film. You cannot find an actor who's not a member of the union. They just don't exist. You cannot make low budget film just writing good drama and casting actors. You cannot cast actors you want. So you should write a script for which you can cast. And there are a lot of examples, like right after Liquid Sky, maybe even at the same time, John Sayles made film Secaucus 7. He was a scriptwriter. He never learned directing. He just bought editing table and learned editing by the manual to the editing table. He had a summer apartment. Somebody left him apartment for the summer. He took, being scriptwriter, he knew a lot of actors who got together, his friends, actors, and he wrote a script for this location and for these actors. And he made a great film. It really was the beginning of his career. So what I'm saying, you need to use what you have. And you need to use it the best. So by the moment Liquid Sky was written, the script was written, we were already making other projects which didn't happen because the investor stopped giving money. He met a very good best production manager in New York. The best production manager read script and said that there is no way to make this film for $500,000. And of course, investor trusted more production manager than me, who came from Russia, never made film in the United States. And how can I know how to make it cheap? So I knew that script should be, I knew already that I cannot raise more than $500,000. So script should be such that, and by this moment, I knew Bob Brady, who was playing himself in Liquid Sky, who was a teacher, acting teacher and casting director. And I knew a lot of his students, including in Carlisle. And it was like very family-like class. They were every evening getting together in Bob's loft, having dinner together. And, you know, most of them became, I mean, my wife, Nina, and I just became part of this company. We became friends. And not only Anne, I mean, a lot of these people have nightlife, going to nightclubs, and we joined them. We were happy to learn all that, and then this idea came to me to make a film about a girl who finds alien as her Prince Charming. I thought that somebody like Anne Carlisle, having half, you know, blue, half red hair and you know, a new wave model, is a very good candidate for this. But that's not happened not only because of that. It was like, again, as I said, like I met Yuri, like I found the book of Kuleshov. Everybody comes by itself. My wife, Nina, who is a scriptwriter by profession, by the way, she wrote, I mean, by education in the same film school. She was writing scripts about a girl who cannot, who has sexual problems, who cannot get orgasm. And she almost wrote the script, but she wasn't happy with her English. Obviously, we're from Russia, and, you know, and then became our friend. So she invited her to work together on this script and moved to our loft. Actually, we were neighbors with the same building at that moment with Bob Brady. So all this life was around. And they were working on the script, and they were like having dinner. We discussed the problems of female orgasm and like that. And I decided that this element should be in this, you know, should be part of the story of my princess who found the aliens from outer space. So then I decided that Anne should play herself and use, I mean, a lot of lines she says, really, I think most of the lines which really she said or somebody said to her in real life. That's real lights. And then I decided that it should be base of the entire film. It is speaking about realistic filmmakers. At that moment, it was very popular, especially in Europe. I mean, some Sweden director, I think, made a film where his girlfriend had sexual relationship with some guy who he hated, and he was shooting this sex on the screen, and some other camera was shooting him, how he reacts to that. So I mean, involving real life in the filming was very, very big. And I decided that we write the script the way that everybody we know will play himself.
So in fact, you meant to have them to model the script and reshape the script according to the cast, and made them talk in a more, because it's at the same time you mentioned a more naturalistic or natural way, but it looked like it's filled with mannerism the way they speak. You know, they have this kind of attitude, you know, about themselves, about Anne Carlyle, who played both character, and she wonderfully plays both with different voice, but they have a kind of way to speak which is like, I was wondering if it was meant to be kind of fashionable, or people from the fashion world would speak like that, you know, with this kind of intonation. What was your directing wheel at this time?
Speaking like that in their real life. And like writing script, for example, we couldn't find the way how this German guy comes to somebody's apartment, what first thing he would say. So we just invited him for dinner, the actor, who actually it was his first role. It's a separate story how I found him. So we invited him to dinner. He came, took from his red jacket 2 bottles of wine and said, that's for you, that's what I drink. So actually came to the script. So there's a lot of lines in the script made this way, which just were involving everybody, all the friends knew that we're writing a script, but nobody knew what's it about. It was like a big secret around. And they knew that we're using them some way because we were asking them these questions and all that. So most everybody plays. Of course, we didn't plan at that moment and playing 2 roles. She's supposed to play herself. But I knew that in her childhood, her mother wanted to have a boy and was dressing her as a boy and calling her Jimmy. That I had in my mind. And I always thought that it would be very good if she would play both. And it happened that real boy who exists, who was used in the script, read the script and got pissed off. He didn't like the script at all. And he started behaving very, very negative. I said, okay, we don't need low budget production. We don't need negative people. And let's try. Make a boy. First of all, the same evening, we just took some nice costume, put it on Anne, and went to nightclub. And she really played the boy very well. It's dark in nightclub. She was successful. She really, got a boy and all that. I mean, got a girl because she was a boy. So then we decided to work harder. We had a friend, makeup artist, who was teaching in Cincinnati University makeup. With Yuri, took Anne into his car and drive to Cincinnati because she couldn't come to New York. She was teaching there. She had a job. So there they were making like 10, 20, I don't know how many variants of makeup for boy. And sending me these photographs. I still have a lot of Polaroids with different hands variants of the boy. And finally, we approved this variant, which is in the film.
chicken. You're just a chicken. Please, Jimmy, don't start on me now.
But it looked, during these tests, it looked like completely different guy. Should be the black hair, because she is blonde, so he should be black. And it was very believable as well.
I have a question now relating, and Zarina mentioned it very briefly, but relating to the music. I saw that you were one of the person that created the original music on a Fairlight digital app that you got for free in New York City. And I was very much interested again in this limited mean philosophy and the fact of using this music that is fairly, in some way, sometimes intricate, but use the sound of the music which is being used is like very much like popular music, is very much like toy music in some way. And I was wondering regarding the music, which kind of, how did you come up, with, you could have taken as well somebody playing cello, you could have, what made that you wanted this kind of a bit of an artificial, arty-crafty, artificial kind of music? What was your incentive? What was your motivation in finding this music, in composing this music?
A long story. I did want the music which would sound like naive circus, but electronic. I mean, for me, always the best film music was Nina Rota for Fellini's films.
Oh, of course, yes. Yes.
It to sound like the circus, like this naive circus music, which is
okay.
Not. Oh.
Yes.
So, but I wanted it very electronic, and there were quite a few of composers in New York who were writing electronic music. I still have somewhere a big box of this cassettes with their music. They all tried to sound like a big symphony orchestra, as Carlos did for Kubrick's films. Like, they tried to find it big. I said I wanted funny and primitive. They didn't understand why I want primitive music. Then I tried to invite somebody. Doesn't work as well as inviting a composer. So, and then somebody told me that this thing appeared, the first computer to write music, Firelight musical computer instrument. And that a couple of composers have it, and this organization, Public Access Synthesizers. I went to this place, Public Access Synthesizers. There were two persons there who were authorized by constructors to teach composers to use this thing. For very small money, they did it. So it is Clive Smith and Brenda Hutchinson. I always prefer to work with women, so I invited Brenda to write the music. We spent some time together. It didn't work at all because her understanding of music was completely different from mine. So one day she said, listen, it looks like you know exactly what you want. Why you wouldn't write this music yourself? I said, listen, I'm musically completely ignorant. I cannot read notes. I'm not. I said, well, so what? Who most of rock and roll composers don't know notes and know nothing. So I said, okay, if you will put them, I'll pay for pass for this organization. And if you help me to put it on the computer, let's do it. I'll write it myself. We started working. Then she left. She got grant and left to San Francisco to record conversations of killers, prisoners in the prison, in order to edit them into symphony. That was her taste for music. So I left with Clive, and we made the rest of the music with Clive. I already had a long list of music which I want to use already existing music, and it was this music was chosen exactly like all the other associations. There was I had like I needed a German scientist who would have the same name that Faust had. The same thing. I did some music of 18th century, some music of early American, which were giving background to young Margaret, and so on and so on. So the choice of pieces which I chosen was very, very special, especially what I thought Boris needed to do. The rest I wrote myself, which was very easy. I just was singing it or playing one finger to the Clive, and he was putting it to, and sometimes he did something which I cannot do, like some harmonization of this music. And that's how this music was made. For me, it was the only way to do it. I just didn't manage to find a composer. Least of all, I was planning to write music myself.
I have another question, maybe for before getting back to Slava, but maybe for Marina and Yuri. I was wondering if on the set, or if when you worked on the costume or on the photography, was there any element, sonic element from music, for instance? Did some music was played on the set, or did I know that when there is all the dancing part, I was struck and very interested by the disconnect between the music and the people dancing, meaning like the people were dancing, but not on the beat of the music. They were dancing, and the music was what we call extra diegetical. They were dancing much faster than the music. How this scene was shot? Was it like, did you add music on the set at the time? Do you remember, Yuri, and Marina? Did you add some influence on making the costume or the set design because of the music, because of the style?
Music has nothing to do with it. Marina created all these costumes. On the set, when they made the show, there was this rhythm box, the box which makes it a rhythm track. And then we wrote the music to this rhythm track. I guess we did it, I don't know why this track thing was, because they were dancing to this rhythm track. Probably they just couldn't get it to rhythm. But
I thought it was interesting, by the way. I like the disconnect, you know. I like there was like two elements at the same time, and even if it was not meant to be, it was a beautiful aesthetical mistake. You know?
That's why it's there. But we had no this music. It was a big problem for us to have music. We had music only to song, Me and My Rhythm Box, and it's a long story how we got this soundtrack. That's the additional long story.
The other question was related.
Marina's costumes to this was the most fantastic thing for fashion show, because you know, Marina often easily answered the question what budget and nobody believes. But what she was doing, it really wasn't costumes in the normal human meaning. She really created, it was improvisation on the people. I don't know if she has still kept some elements of that, but there are no dresses, right?
Yes, I actually was gluing costumes together from pieces by gaffer's tape, which I found on the street. It's yes, it was pure improv. It was absolutely improvisation. Yes, I was looking at the designs of makeup. I was looking at models, and I was looking at Anne, and I was just trying to figure out. And by the way, I was looking at what kind of sky was at this point on background, and created the colors and color scheme for the costumes. Yes, it was pure improvisation.
And that's another question for Yuri relating to the way the scene was shot when they dance. Did you got what was your strategy for the lighting? Was it influenced by the way they were dancing, by the music, the rhythm? Did you add something you would like to comment on this scene? When you remember this scene when they're dancing?
You're talking in the scene in the club, right?
In the club,
yes, in the club, yes, when they're dancing.
First of all, okay, my main task was to reproduce or reinvent the dynamic of this crazy atmosphere. But basically, nobody knew what they're going to do next second.
Yes.
It was basically obvious what's happening in this kind of club. So we certainly could not change any lighting. We could not change anything else. Only one tool I have at my disposal is the movement of the camera. Movement and change angles as many times as I feel I have to do it. To change rakurses, angles, and direction to basically to let audience feel craziness, electricity of the place.
And also, as long as we talk, Yuri, I was of course very interested by the subjective point of view of UFO or the aliens. Each time they look at the people making love and waiting for the orgasm and waiting to suck up their energy, and how did you work this effect? Because the point of view is very interesting. It really looked like somebody taking LSD, and then of course we'll talk about the sound because there is some interesting sound. But in terms of image, what was the decision there, and what influenced you, and which kind of visual effects decision, and how did you make it?
We knew it's supposed to be done very unusual scene, and it's supposed to be something looks like it has to be create its own space, its own world, and we with rather limited possibilities, I have to go to invent some technology and reinvent other technology, which and we use a combined technology of laser prisms,
Okay,
exposure, and some technology which so-called NASA technology I had access to reinvent it little and insert in this multiplying exposures. That's why I needed this special camera who can hold up to 10 exposures.
oh,
And
wow.
we create, so to speak, a ratatouille of all technologies.
It's great, great expression.
Yeah, I could call it better. It's ratatouille. and did a lot of tests of which kind of ratatouille will do better for us. We found right ratatouille, and then we did some additional operation in color correction and on a set, I mean special effects set in the post also, and this is create very unique space deserved like the sky.
And thank you. And Slava, and a last question on this, what we call the sonic point of view of the alien. You worked out this very special electronic effect that, as a matter of fact, are nowadays very, very much up to date. I mean, we could use them very easily now. I mean, it was very at the time must have been very, very new and very much in advance for what was being done at the time in terms of sound effect. How did you work that out? How did you make that? Because it's such like the feeling that you have the what we call also the sonic identity of the alien. You know, whenever they want to suck up the energy of these people.
Oh, I think Yuri just answered this question. The thing is, we took a car, went to New Jersey, far away. There was a store which like for people playing technical things, so like a lot of different details. You can buy anything like from laser to, I don't know, whatever, or lenses, parts of some optical equipment. And we bought a lot of stuff. We brought this stuff to my place. That's where I'm sitting now. It's exactly the room where we made all the special effects. And we played with these things. We put them together different ways, and we found the way how to make these effects.
I like that because you work so much. I mean, David Lynch has been later on working so much like that, you know, just picking up whatever is around, and especially for sounds, it's famous to know that he was picking up some sound tapes from Universal Garbage and putting them together and creating great sound effect and just using whatever was available and make it's so creative. So it's great attitude, great approach to filmmaking.
Thank you so much for your great questions, Bruno, and for the great answers, Slava and Marina and Yuri. We have quite a few questions from the audience by now. There were quite a lot of comments here, including from someone who actually was a part of the scene at the time and watched you guys shoot in Liquid Sky at a club, at the Pyramid Club, and seen it first at the Waverly at West 3rd Street, now IFC Center. So thank you for that. That's invaluable. And also there are a couple of questions here. First one for Slava. Is it true that Kurt Vonnegut Jr. wanted to have an original print celluloid of the movie?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. There's a lot of myths connected with the film. There was another one, and I'll ask it. Is that true or not that Raymond Zarek contacted you from the Doors and wanted to make an MTV video with you?
Yes.
So that's true. All right. Okay. Another.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the Doors album LP, and there is like a drawing that looks exactly like the point of view of the alien with this kind of LSD kind of. It's not surprising that he called you.
If he would want to make this song, I probably would make it. But he wanted to make a song. Strange Days. This record has very beautiful shot in the street here in the village, beautiful picture, which is what he wanted just recreate this cover exactly. And then I was saying, well, maybe we'll find something different. He didn't want it. Right. So I didn't make a lot of music videos with a lot of famous people because I just wasn't getting excited. I mean, I just wanted to do what I wanted.
But I know that Marina did. Marina did an MTV video with David Bowie, right, Marina?
Yes, I did. Yes, I worked with David Bowie and Carly Simons, and together with Slava, we worked on, we did Nile Rodgers, which was big star at this time, and Martin Scorsese directed Robbie Robertson. I was production designer. So I did plenty of music videos, yes.
It's so fascinating. There's just so much to it. There's one question, but we unfortunately don't have time to go into that, because that would be a long story about Sweet 16, in which Andy Warhol was supposed to be a part, right, Slava? So we'll leave it for another interview and for some other time. So I'll end up with one fun question that I got via email. Somebody's asking, is that true that the green grasshopper that became kind of a symbol of the movie just jumped in through the window?
Green grasshopper.
Ah, yeah, sure.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes.
So that was just a coincidence?
It was pure coincidence. And when we saw this insect, it was immediately like, we have to have it. We have to have it. And Yuri ran with camera and started shooting it. It was pure coincidence. Yes.
Yeah, because shooting already.
And it's and this grasshopper fly away immediately after we finish shooting.
That's unbelievable. There's just so many magical moments. I'll finish up mentioning that, and I believe it's true because I actually researched it a little bit in my journalistic capacity, that Mikhail Gorbachev, who actually started perestroika in the Soviet Union, for those who are not familiar, was watching The Liquid Sky, which in Russian, with the Russian subtitles, had a name, The Punishment for Debauchery. It wasn't called Liquid Sky. He was watching it when he was in Crimea, captured by the communists during the coup in 1991. It was a very dramatic moment in history in Russia, and that was the film that Mikhail Gorbachev was watching. So the more you look into it, the more is coming out, from grasshopper to other things, and it's just endless. I know it because I fell down this rabbit hole many years ago, and I can never make my way out of it. So I just really want to thank Slava Tsukerman and Marina Levikova and Yuri Neyman for making appearance today at Globus Books channel, Bruno Toussaint, who helped me to interview the crew of The Liquid Sky, our audience, who was very active and wrote a lot and asked a lot of questions. And this show will be edited, and I have Slava's permission to use some of the still shots and maybe a little bit of scenes and music, and we will have visual references that we discussed. Please subscribe to our channel, Globus Books SF, to support the independent bookstore in San Francisco, and visit us at www.globusbooks.com. We sell a lot of books in English and in Russian on all things former Soviet Union. And everybody stay safe, stay well, and come back again soon. Thank you very much, everyone.
Where are you from? Philadelphia.